The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar on ServiceWise. Today I'm going to be presenting an overview of ServiceWise and maybe some of the best practices and features within the tool that you may not know of. My name is Prince Huang. I am the Director of Product Management here at TechExcel, and I thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to type those out and I'll try to answer them towards the end of the session. But going forward, we're going to be doing short 30-minute training sessions every 2 weeks. And at the end of it, we'll have recorded videos of the session as well as 5-minute videos of specific features that we may have talked about. So stay tuned for those. We'll send you emails with all the videos, all the recordings that we have shortly. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my demo system here. And right now I'm inside the employee web portal. So there's two portals in ServiceWise. There's one for the employees and there's one for the team or the agents. So essentially inside the employee web portal, once I log in, we're going to be presented with a few things. Think of it as your self-service portal. On the homepage itself, I have the ability to post announcements. And so I'm just trying to illustrate that, you can use HTML. So I have an image right here. And also, for specific use cases, it might be things like, maintenance that you're doing that you want to let your end users know. So those kind of announcements can all be placed onto the homepage, and they're able to search the knowledge base for resolutions to tickets as well. So if I go into the knowledge right here, if I didn't have that error, you'll be able to see the knowledge base to do the search. One thing that you guys may not know of is that the knowledge base, the knowledge search itself, can be placed outside of the portal. So the end users don't necessarily have to log in first to be able to search. The other feature that I wanted to mention here too is that as you're submitting, tickets within the system, we're able to actually present knowledge articles that are relevant to the problem that's being submitted as well. So stay tuned for videos on how to configure some of that. I won't be covering that today, but just stay tuned for how we can do that. Okay, so on the homepage, the other things I want to mention too is basically this is where the services that you're offering to your end users can be displayed here or listed out here. So you can kind of see I have a couple of different requests. There's new hire requests, there's account password, resets, things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the difference between these. So let's do a simple one like account password request right here. You'll see that there's not much that needs to be filled out. I'm using basically what's called templates inside our system to pre-populate some of this stuff here. So all I have to do is really, and I shouldn't even have to pick any of these things. All the user has to do is basically hit submit, and then that's it, right? An account password request. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this, and then we're going to look at something like a trouble ticket. So you'll notice that in a trouble ticket, I have more fields here. So for example, I have my title description, but I also have the impact and the urgency. This is a best practice here too because it uses the ITIL priority matrix. So instead of having your end users pick a priority, they're always going to choose high or urgent for every issue that they have. So instead of doing that, I enabled what's called the impact, and you can kind of see here, what's the impact? Are we talking about just you that's having this issue, or everybody within your department, etc.? And then that basically combined with the urgency will determine the priority automatically. Okay, so that's something I've set up, a priority matrix. I'll show you later on how that looks like on the team side. The other thing about this too is that depending on the ticket type, right here, this is an incident because we're reporting an issue. It's got these fields, but if I go ahead and close this and let's go into the home page and go into a service request, that's going to be of the ticket type request, right? So Now, your users are not going to know the difference between incidents versus requests, but all they need to know is that, whenever I submit, something like this, the fields are going to be a little bit different. So you can kind of see the urgency, the impact kind of disappeared. This is purely requests. And then you can kind of see I have a multi-select here. So what am I requesting? So it's a completely different, form based on, the ticket type. So um, that's something that we can do in ServiceWise and also maybe even, different workflows for the different types of tickets. Okay. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and do one real quick. And just to remind you, this session is not only going to be about, help desk, but I'm going to show you a little bit more than that too. For example, how we can do change management and have it integrated, with your help desk. So I'm going to go ahead and submit something right here. I'm going to submit an issue. I'm going to say web page is loading extremely slow, something like that. And then I'm just going to copy and paste. And then basically pick a category and a subcategory. So there's parent-child relationships within these fields too. So if I pick something here, the subcategory should fall under the category. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick something here. I apologize, my data is not 100% here. But also with ServiceWise, you can integrate asset management or CMDB too. So down here, I'm logged in as Anna, and these are the available assets that Anna's using. So let's say she had an issue with her laptop and she had multiple laptops, she can actually indicate which one. So we can submit tickets against assets too if you have that module. Okay, so in this case, I'm not going to pick anything. I'm also able to do attachments, and I'm going to go ahead and submit that. So right here, there's a little warning that tells me, hey, no assets are selected. You want to continue? So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. So having said that, Anna just submitted that ticket. She's able to, converse with the team, so she can go ahead and say, call me at this number instead, um, something like that, because the team's able to see her information, but she might be at a different location, so she can notify the team, um, you know, any kind of message she wants to send over to them. So I'm going to go ahead and, save that. I'm gonna go ahead and update, and that will save it. Okay, so pretty much we have everything we need here. Under the ticket list view here, those will be a list of issues that Anna has submitted in the past. And what's useful about this is not only can she always, get updates on her current existing issues, but maybe, she reported a similar problem in the past and she kind of forgot the resolution. So she can easily search on, closed tickets and kind of type in that keyword and maybe see what that resolution is there. Okay, so now behind the scenes, there's going to be a lot of, you can set up email notifications as well, right, with this. So not only does she have to log in, but anytime she submits a ticket or anytime there's an update on the ticket, there could be a notification to her with a link that brings her directly into the issue itself. Okay, so that's the employee web portal. So if you're not using that right now, that's something you can turn on easily and potentially save you a lot of time with help desk. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the team side of things. So that's the different portal, and this is probably the portal that everybody's familiar with. I just want to mention to you that I'm using the latest version, version 10. If you're using version 9, the interface may look a little bit different or actually very different. But this thing is just a newer version. It has a lot more capability. So again, I'm going to go into the home page. The home page is going to be a little bit different than what you see over on the team side of things or on the employee side of things. The difference being that not only do we have our list of tickets that are being displayed here, open tickets and things like that from different places, but we are also able to add reports right into the dashboard here. Okay, so I added a couple different drill down reports. Any reports I create, I can go ahead and add them. These are all widgets, so you can kind of place them anywhere you want. One other thing that people don't know about is you're also able to create additional dashboards. Okay, so the homepage can support multiple dashboards depending on what processes you might be managing. So for instance, right now I'm logged into my help desk incident management here. But let's say I was a member of my change management, then I'm able to create a dashboard for just change management reports and so on and so forth. And so what these guys are right here are what you see up on the top here. So under ServiceWise, you can create as many, projects, what we call projects, but really I like to call them processes, if you will. But here I'm actually a member of all of these different processes, whether it's HR onboarding, help desk, change management, problem management, so on and so forth. Um, so um, what people usually start off with is incident management, right? So tracking tickets, trying to provide resolutions to the end users. But if you want to take a step forward or a little bit further, you can implement change management, and that's extremely easy with ServiceWise. So I just want to go ahead and bring that up to you real fast. So I'm going to drop the admin down here, and so that's what I'm going to be covering a little bit today, how everything can be integrated. And so inside the admin, provided that you have access to this, you'll see all of the different processes here, right? The difference being, between all of these is really the workflow, and then the forms, the form layouts, the users, and things like that. So every process will have its own different workflow. So I'm going to go into incident management real quick, show you my workflow. It might be very, similar to what you guys have today. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete the state real quick. So it's a Visio diagram. It's extremely easy to use right here. So my workflow, is just something that is basic, but it's enough. So essentially what I'm saying is new tickets are going to come into triage, then they're going to be worked on. And then as a best practice, I'm going to create a resolve notify state. So this state right here, or this status, is really not a closed state, but I want my end users to verify the resolution that I provided before I close the ticket. Okay, so this is just a step forward before it closes. And I'm going to show you, some tricks to actually automatically move, resolve tickets to close as well. In a couple of minutes here. Okay, now one thing I did implement is my change management. So I added a new state called change request, right? So from in progress, I can go to change request. From level 2, I can also go to change request. And level 2, real quickly, just means that, let's just say I have my primary support agents working on the ticket, but, they need, additional help from maybe experts in that field, right? So they're going to forward it to level 2 support. And let's say there's something that support really can't do, then potentially I'm going to move it over to change request. So something like hardware changes. Let's say in that example I gave you where the user is experiencing that the website is performing extremely slow. Well, that's not something that support can handle. Maybe we needed to add more memory on that server. So what I will do is from that support ticket, I will automatically create a change request, right? And then we can schedule, when to add that memory, and then eventually complete that change and resolve that ticket. Okay, so that's my incident management workflow. Really straightforward here. But I'm going to hop over to change management real quick. So essentially, I created another process here, change management. You can do this easily, but basically, again, the difference between all of these is mainly their workflow. So change management actually follows a completely different workflow than my help desk. So over here, again, I start with new, but for all changes, it's that triage state, it's that acceptance state, right? So we have to verify, we have to actually say, well, this is a valid change before we go ahead and implement it. Now, if it's a standard minor change, something, very, quick to do and doesn't really impact anybody, we're going to go ahead and implement that right away. Okay. Now, if it's something that's going to cause some downtime, it's pretty significant, impacts a lot of users, we might potentially implement the CAB or the Change Advisory Board for them to approve of it, for them to schedule it out, and then go ahead and implement. Okay, so that's really the change workflow right there. Then once we implement it, we're going to send it over to QA testing, and then potentially deploy it out. In QA testing, we're sending out, we'll roll it out to maybe a test server and then maybe deploy it into the production server. And then eventually we get to this state, UAT. So this guy right here is where, the users are verifying, hey, okay, my problem has been fixed and whatnot. And then we can finally go ahead and close out that change. Now, there's synchronization between these two statuses. So whenever I move something to UAT, let's say it had a linked support ticket. Let's say this change came from a support ticket. what it can do is it can automatically move that ticket from change requested to resolve notify. Okay, so whenever we reach that UAT and change, then the support ticket, the link support ticket, could potentially go ahead and automatically go to resolve notify, where the users are telling us if it's been resolved or not. Okay, so that's the integration between these two. If you want to take that a step further, or if you want to implement more idle processes, we can also do problem management. We can do other idle practices as well, and have that integrated. So these guys all work with each other, um, and that's the integration, and that's how we can support the idle framework. Okay, so I'm going to bring you back into the front end again, and we're going to take a look at that. So right now I'm inside, incident management. I have that highlighted. I'm inside there, and you can kind of see what Anna has submitted right here, right? So web page, it's loading extremely slow. I'm going to take it through the workflow. So these buttons that you see up on the top, start work, need more info, or drop, those are going to be all these different transition lines that you see connecting the states. Okay, so we have start work, we have drop. I delete that state, I forgot to reload, but once I do that reload, this guy will be gone, right? The need more info. But I'm going to go ahead and hit start work. But actually, before I do that, you'll see that I actually have a priority field here, right? This wasn't available to Anna when she was submitting that ticket because, again, she's going to go ahead and, put everything as high. I'm sure you guys all experienced that. But this guy right here, this priority matrix, is dependent on, what my urgency is, what my impact is. And, hence we have, low priority for this guy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and start work here. There's some, notices where if I'm making changes and I leave this page, it's going to actually prompt me to save. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that for now. And right now, all my tickets are going to the queue. But here I have um, some sort of minor resource management here. So the numbers that you see aside right next to people's names right here would be the number of tickets that they're currently working on. So let's just say, well, Terry's got 86 tickets. There's no way he can do another one. I'm going to go ahead and forward it over to Dean. Or I can use auto assignment. So there is a feature inside ServiceWise where it does round robins, and it looks at all the different fields and determine who the right person should be working on this ticket. So let's say if it's a telecom issue, then it can potentially go to the telecom group, right? Telecom support, and nobody else. So we could potentially just say auto assignment whenever we forward it off to somebody else, right? Or you can just go ahead and manually do this like I'm doing right here. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a work description. These are internal notes that only the team can see. So, Matt, please take a look. So I'm just writing a note there, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. And that's notes that are timestamped that only the team can see. Now, up here, I've organized this in a way where it kind of makes sense to me as I'm working through tickets. So, this is a preference thing that you guys can always do. So you can customize this and you can move things around, move it up or down, define the order of how the tabs appear. And that's per user. Okay, so, right away, I'm going to go to the conversation, piece right here, and then I can actually write a note to Anna, right? Now, again, emails are going in, behind the scenes here. So we're not trying to say like, remove the way you guys do things today by email, right? But this is kind of augmenting, your emails too. The other thing about this too is if your email subject, has the subject line of your emails have the ticket number 1699, on the subject line, then any emails that are going back and forth between Anna and this agent will be captured as part of this ticket. So, you don't necessarily have to not use emails no more. There's no way that that's even possible. But we can capture all the emails that are going back and forth as part of this ticket. All right. So now, under the status page here, I've enabled SLAs. So if this is something you guys are looking for, you can absolutely implement this. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save right now. You can kind of see my notes that it's timestamped, right? But basically, this is a low priority ticket. So you can kind of see I have already set a defined set response time and then defined resolve time. So my SLA, my standard SLA says that for low priority tickets, I have to at least respond within 8 hours and then, resolve it within this time frame, right? So that's SLAs, right? So we'll have videos on how we can set that up. So I saved it already, and now I'm going to go into tickets here. So up here, what you're going to see here is generally, I see a lot of people working through tickets by, looking at priority. And then you can kind of see um, I have different colors as well, different visual cues to represent, critical priority here, right? But this is, let's just say I have a scenario like this where I have, 10 or 15 different, critical tickets. Well, which one do I do first? By enabling SLAs, I basically can add, um, the total remaining response time and then the total remaining resolve time and kind of, use that to determine which tickets I need to work on first. So instead of going down this list of 15 critical tickets, maybe I want to do something that's going to end soon, right? So SLAs can help you with that. Once you turn that on, you can add these fields. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sort it by the ticket ID, find that one again. And then now let's just say, I have this case where the web page is loading extremely slow, and I'm going to go ahead and quit this guy. So, okay. So let's say, I'm going to go ahead and escalate that to level 2, right? And they're going to try to work on it. And level 2 might have completely different owners here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say, hi, can you please help? So I'm going to go ahead and put a note there. I'm forwarding this to level 2. And then let's say level 2 is now working on it, and they can't really do anything. So I have this button up here, request change. What that's going to do is going to go ahead and create a ticket automatically inside change management. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then you can kind of see it's going to submit a new RFC over to change management, only because level 2 knows that it's not something that they can do. They need hardware on this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And then essentially what's going to happen is under links, we're going to see a new ticket, 156 right here, inside change management as part of the support ticket. So we're not going to, press that button whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, I can remove that button and have automation take over. So that really shouldn't even be there. But essentially what I've done now is I submitted this over to our change management team. Okay. Now over on the front end here in the list view, what I can do is I think I can choose to display links. So up here, there's a little setting right there, show link items, and then you're able to see everything that's linked together. Now, before I go any further, we can also, merge tickets together. Let's just say, there's 10 tickets that are coming from that have the same issues. We can actually merge those together as one ticket, or we can link them all together. So linking is extremely useful for that too. That way you only need to work on the parent ticket, and then when you resolve that, the rest of them get resolved as well. So that feature is available too. Okay, so now we're inside change management, right? Where we have a new change management ticket 156. I'm going to hop over to change management, and basically, the change team will be in here, and I have a couple of different things enabled here too. So over on the left-hand side, we can enable this tree where we can group changes together as projects. Let's say I want to roll out, the latest Windows 10 update to everybody. That's a project that I can create over here inside change management. Okay, so it's essentially just grouping tickets together. So if I click on, any of these folders, the things that appear on the right-hand side will be all of the things I need to do for that specific project. Okay, and then you can have a start, end date as well for these. And then there's a Gantt chart that we can use over here in Plan that represents all these different projects within a Gantt chart. Okay, so it looks something like this. So here's my different projects, my start and end date, the things that I need to do for each one of these projects. They can also have a start and end date as well. So it's kind of useful for just planning out projects in general. But for change management, let's say I don't care about all that. I can choose to disable that, and then I can have my change requests right here. Okay, so Um, let's take a look at something, well, the new one that we created. So I'll open and close. I'm going to look for 156. Hopefully I find it. Okay, if not, it's okay. I can just take an example here. Um, Acceptance and classification. So this one's going to go through its own workflow, right? So I'm in a completely different process. It's completely different than help desk. It can go through its own process right here. So I'm going to just say it's a significant change. And I'm going to go ahead and save right here. And it's going to complain about some fields not being able, or some mandatory fields that aren't filled out. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that out real quick. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to mark it as significant. Okay, so now what's going to happen is it's going to go over to cab, and an event is going to be created for this person to approve. Okay, so I'm going to hit continue here. Oops. I'm doing things a little faster here. And so events are basically tasks inside ServiceWise, or subtasks, if you will. But under events, we're going to see that we have a management approval event, right? So what this means is that instead of a person clicking on, approved here or reject here, they basically had to come in and close this event. So we cannot press this button. Let's just say if I have that control enabled, I can't press that button because I have to actually, or Terry actually, the person who's responsible for approving, actually has to go and approve it here and say approved, right? So what the events are is you can potentially have multiple owners working on any given ticket. So this change request could potentially be handled by, somebody else, right? And then whereas the approver is a completely different individual. So, the person who's responsible for this ticket can't press this, but the person who's approving, can go ahead and do this before we move it over to the next state. So this is pretty manual. I want to actually show you how we can automate some of this. So I'm going to go ahead and log in to this little demo account right here. So I'm going to go ahead and log in right here. And then basically you can see right here, an email notification came out, right, for that change. And then, you can of course set up HTML and, change the format, include different fields on here, include links to this change and whatnot, and, so on and so forth. But this is the most important feature I wanted to mention to you guys. So right here, please click a link to approve. So we can set this up in the system where if I click on approve, or reject, it's going to actually move it through the workflow automatically, right? So if I click approve here, so Terry doesn't really have to come into the system. He doesn't have to, come into this events and figure out, which event he needs to go ahead and approve, right? An email is basically, going out to him and he's approving and rejecting through that email. Similarly, you can use this feature for when, help desk tickets are being resolved, right? You can send this notice over to your end user, and they can click on resolve or not resolved, right? And that will actually either bring it back to the support team, or let's say they say it's resolved, then the ticket will automatically close. So it could be used for many different purposes, for approvals, for um, acknowledgement and whatnot, right? So what I did was I clicked on that approve, and you can kind of see here for that management approval event, it's approved, it's closed, and even my status changed, right? So under history, it was over in cab, and then it got approved by Terry through his email, and then now it's sitting in implementation, right? Now, what you're going to see under events is that I have a bunch of other things that I need to do here too. So again, these are tasks, and if I configure my system correctly, for implementation, I have to do the following three things here. They should have all had different owners as well, right? So different people working on these different things. So we have a parent owner for the ticket, for the change request, but yet we need help from all these different teams to implement this change. So these are all captured by the events. Now we can, enforce some rules here too, where I say, hey, if these are still open, then I can't send it to QA testing. So I can't, press this button unless all of these events get closed. Okay. So I don't know if I have that turned on. We'll see in a second. But I'm gonna go ahead and bring you guys to HR onboarding as well. So events can really be used for onboarding as well here. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that. I'm gonna create a new HR onboarding ticket, and I'm gonna say it's for this person, um, Jane Doe, new hire, right? What department she's in, etc. And then, these people, this manager right here hiring Jane Doe, he could have went inside his, the portal here, and he could have done the same thing by clicking on this guy, right? New hire. And then he could have submitted this ticket on behalf of, Jane Doe, right? So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. Start date. Oh, okay. So I have some mandatory fields that I didn't fill out. I'm gonna go ahead and pick something here. I'm gonna submit and continue. And what's gonna happen here is, again, we're gonna use what we call events. So I'm gonna take you back here. I'm gonna configure this to show events. So Jane Doe new hire. Let me go ahead and refresh this. Okay. Oops. So I want to show open events this time. So you can kind of see here, what I did is there's a person that's responsible, somebody in HR that's responsible for this new hire. But for any new hires, we have to create a phone extension for them. We have to create their accounts in AD. We have to prepare their assets and things like that. And you can kind of see events can be used in that way, right? It's for different teams to do. So before I can close this, before I can say HR, complete, it's actually saying, well, you got to do these things, this checklist of items, before we can officially say, the hire is complete. Okay, so that's what events can be used for all these different processes, right? And the other thing about events is these three guys are created concurrently, but we could serialize this too. So I can say when this event is closed, completed, then it's actually going to create additional tasks for me to do. So it could be serialized. It doesn't all have to be created all at once like this. Okay, so that's something that if you aren't using today, it's extremely useful to capture that checklist of things you need to do. So I'm going to take you back to change management, and essentially we have that same thing here but for implementation. So I have to implement in web services. We got to implement something in phones and whatnot. So I'm gonna go ahead and save. Yeah, and it's actually complaining that I have to close all these. Okay, so I have that workflow restriction turned on where I have to actually come in and close all of these. And again, I'm doing this as like a super user. Um, it's really, these events are not going to appear for everybody. It's all privilege based. So I'm going to go ahead and say scheduled or successful, save this, and submit. So I'm going to just real quickly do it for all of these real fast here. Submit. And then so I'm just closing these out. And I think by doing this, it can automatically move it over to QA testing as well. So I'm not sure if it did that. Let me see if I refresh here. Okay, it didn't automate my workflow status, but it could do that too. It could potentially move this ticket, this change request forward without you needing to press that button. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, and now it's in UAT. So essentially, if my system was working correctly, under my links, if I had any link support tickets, it would have moved it automatically over to resolved. Okay, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to find my link ticket here. Under links, I should have worked on 156 instead of that random ticket that I just did. But this should have moved forward automatically over to resolve notify. Um, and then so that's the best practice, right? That's that status that where I'm not, actually closing the ticket unless somebody actually gets that email and say it's resolved, right? Before it will automatically close. Now, the other thing that you guys may not know about too is a lot of times, people are busy. We understand that. A lot of people just leave things hang, right? So your end users, even though they get that notification to say, hey, please let us know if this is resolved or not, they basically just ignored the email. They didn't see it, whatnot, right? There's this feature inside the system. It's called email escalations or escalation rules. I'm going to bring you to the admin real quick, but there's a feature under advanced project settings right here, ticket escalation, where you can say if a ticket has no progress or if it's open too long, then you could potentially take action. Okay, so it can, send out additional emails. But the most important thing here is it could potentially do reassignment. So it could actually reassign this ticket to somebody else. Let's say if that person responsible for the ticket was on vacation, we could, potentially reassign that ticket if it was open too long. So similarly, I could use this feature to automatically close these tickets, right? After a certain, duration. So let's say if this has been sitting in resolve, notify, for 2 weeks, then we could potentially use that escalation to go ahead and, automatically close out that ticket. Okay, so that's something we can do within the system. So there's all sorts of little things, tricks that you can use to manage your tickets properly. Um, and of course, we're going to have, recorded videos on how you can configure a lot of these things. Okay, so having said that, let's move on to reporting real quickly here. So under the reports, um, there's a bunch of different reports that you can create. So there's a difference between new public reports and new private reports. And the way I brought this up was just right clicking. Private reports will be something that you create and it's only viewable or visible to you, versus public reports will be any reports that you create, everybody on the team can see it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real fast here. And with the reporting, what you're doing first is you're selecting the type of report that you want. Okay, so um, these are all the different, CAN report types that we have. If you're using AssetWise, one of the cool reports that I use all the time is asset support history. That basically would tell me or give me a report of all assets that have tickets associated with them, right? So let's just say a laptop comes in and has 6 open tickets. I know that's going to be problematic. I need to get RMA for, so I'm going to run that report and kind of show me all of those assets in which they have tickets for. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and just create a distribution report real quickly just to show you. So essentially we're doing the report type first, right? I can rename this. I can go in and edit the report properties, rename that. But then the next thing I'm doing is I'm applying parameters to it. So I'm going to say, well, give me, all reports, from a certain date range, right? So, um, you know, I'm not going to fill that in. I want everything from the beginning of time. Um, and then one other thing too is we can always use search queries. So one thing that people don't realize is that this search query can actually do dynamic reporting. So with this dynamic search right here, we can always say, give me everything within the past 30 days, right? So I can do right here an offset of 30, right? And then I can save this query as a public query or a private query. And again, it's that same concept where I can use this query for myself or everybody can use it. And I'm going to say past 30 days, right? Something like that. All right, so essentially I save that query and I'm going to hit search. And basically I can use that query. So I can always say, give me the past 30 days on whatever this report is, right? So instead of always picking a time range, I'm always getting that past 30 days, right? So I'm going to do no search query right now. I'm going to hit search. And then this is a distribution, I think, against owner right here. But if you ever wanted to change, what we're distributing by, we can just go and edit that. So again, you're picking the report type, then you're applying parameters. Okay. So here, let's see. So distribution report, there's got to be, yeah, there's a way where I can, choose which one it is. But you're able to export reports, and then you're also able to bring this report again onto the homepage, into the dashboard. Okay. Now, one other thing too is, let's just say, not everybody has logins, right? So, but especially those managers who don't really come into the system, they just want to get reports and whatnot. We can go ahead and, export this as a web query report. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a it's going to create a URL for us. So what you can do is you can create a SharePoint site. You can include all these URLs as part of that site, so that, for your managers and whatnot, they just can go directly into that report and get the data they need without coming into the system. Okay, so that I find is pretty useful. It's something that a lot of people use. So just want to mention that to you. Other ways of report exports would be to really just click on a report, and then there's some export options as well. So you can print reports out, you can export in these formats too. Okay. Now, one last cool feature that people don't know about is, let's say you don't like our graphics, okay, it's just not useful. So what we can do is kind of use Excel right here. And so I'm going to open Excel real quick. And then what we can do is we can actually say, I think, insert, if I remember, it's going to be data from web. And then we're going to go ahead and paste that URL in. I'm going to hit go. And then basically it's going to import all that raw data into Excel. So import, you can get that raw data, and then you can start creating your pivot tables and whatnot directly from Excel, right? So you can use Excel's tools to, take this data and do something with it. Okay, so that's what you can do with the web queries. Having said that, I think that's the end of this session. So I'm gonna look to see if anybody had any questions. If not, we're gonna end this, and then we can answer questions privately and whatnot. Okay, so so we have a question right here where we're saying, in your incident description box, how do you, turn on that toolbar? Okay, that's a good question. So inside here, I think a question was asked where um, if I click into the description field, how did I get this toolbar? So that's part of the fields here. So if I go into ticket view, smart screen, I basically just need to go into the description page. And then on any fields where it's actually a text field, if I double click, you're going to see support HTML format, right? So if you check that off, then you will get the ability to actually use HTML. Let's say if you don't, then we can actually enable timestamps as well. So with HTML, unfortunately, we can't do that. If it's just a regular text box, then any new description that we entered can be timestamped. So that's how you would do it. Okay, so that's that question right there. Um, okay, so let's see. We have another question here. So um, when approving a task via email, your workflow showed who clicked the link from the email. How did you get that to work? And our project simply says auto send. This one's a little bit tricky. So Robert, I will contact you later on to help you with that. Okay, it's a little bit tricky to configure. All right, let's see. We got a bunch of additional questions. I'm just gonna go ahead and um, kind of open this right here. Okay. Let's see. Is there a way to not have a pop-up? Yeah. Okay. So we got another question that says, "Is there a way not to have a pop-up when an asset is not assigned?" I believe there is a way, but I'll check into that and get back to you. So essentially, the question was, when an asset is not selected, it gives you that warning where, hey, you have to pick an asset. That message could be annoying. We want to remove that, so we can do that. Um, so I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure if there's a way to remove it, but if there isn't, we can always, and anybody can always submit a support request to us, and then we'll try to get those features in. Okay. All right. So lastly, I'm going to answer one more question. So somebody asked if the webinar is being recorded. Yes, it is. All of the webinars, all of the training sessions going forward will be recorded. And one thing you guys might not know is, how do I get these resources, right? So I'm going to bring you right to it. So there's kind of a couple of different resources. Help.techexcel.com is going to have our user guides and what's new in our releases. But this format's going to change, because what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to put everything into YouTube. Okay, so let me go ahead and open YouTube in a different tab real quick, because I'm not sure what I logged in as. Okay, took us all training, and give me 1 second here. Okay, so there's a YouTube, and that we're creating recently. So basically, in our TechExcel training YouTube, I think it's TechExcel_training, I believe, or just TechExcel training. I'm not, okay, it's TechExcel training. Under this YouTube account, when you come in, you're going to see a bunch of different things, a bunch of different playlists. So one of them being ServiceWise here, and I think this is the wrong one right here, Customer ServiceWise. So we're going to try to record 5-minute videos on all these different things I'm showing you, which is actually a lot more useful than our user guides, right? So I'm going to go ahead and try to, add a bunch of more videos in here. So stay tuned for these. This is what I mean earlier when we're recording these sessions. Okay, they're all going to be placed here. If you're using any other products, we're creating short 5-minute videos on where you need to click, where you need to be in the admin to configure some of these things. Okay. All right. So that's it for now, guys. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate you guys joining. Stay tuned. We're going to do another session in 2 weeks, but the next session isn't going to be an overview. It's going to be things that are more specific, things like SLAs and how we can use those, how we can configure those. And then again, we'll have videos for those. And thanks again for joining. I'll see you next time.